Welcome to the Counseling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for counsellors, psychotherapists, and counselling students. Here are your hosts, Rory Lise Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello and welcome to the special edition of the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Ken's taking a well-earned break, but I'm joined today by our podcast sponsor, Dara McLaughlin from webhealer.net, who's going to share some valuable information on SEO. In other words, how to get your website found. So if you're a private practitioner or you're thinking of having a website built, this is going to be super important to make sure that you're seen on the internet, which is really competitive, and you can be found. So without further ado, Dara, welcome back.
Hi, Rory. How's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. It's going great. So SEO, first of all, Let's get the acronym out of the way. What is SEO?
Yeah, good point, Rory. I mean, the internet is full of acronyms, technical terms, but SEO, probably one of the most known of terms, search engine optimization. And really, Rory, when it comes to having a website online, SEO, search engine optimization, is almost, and if not as important as the website itself. So really excited to talk about it today, share some really useful, practical information with the listeners, and add as much value, I suppose, as possible, because it is such an important area of having a website today.
Absolutely. What we're talking about when we talk about SEO really is finding your website. If you think of your business as a shop, you want people to find you. And if you're not on the map and no one can find you, then you're going to get no one coming through the door and buying your products. And the same goes for the internet. If you can't be found, if you're on the third page of a search engine and you can't be found, chances are that you won't be found. So search engine optimization is really important. And I guess one of the things we have to understand is, what are our audience looking for? What are they looking for?
That's a great point. The old adage of if you build it, they will come is no longer true when it comes to the internet. There's just such competition out there that these days, the number of people trying to rank well for the key phrases and keywords that you're trying to rank well on the search engines for is it's exponentially grown. So you need to have SEO as part of your overall marketing strategy, your website plan. So, I think today, Roy, we're going to talk about a few different areas of this. And as you just mentioned there, understanding your audience and your keywords is the first thing that comes to mind. When you're building your website, when you're having your website built, it's really important that you communicate to your web designer and your web developer who it is that you're trying to target or attract. Target sounds a little bit sinister. Attract, we'll use the word attract here. So you need to think about what it is that your potential clients would type into the search engines when they're looking for a counselor, psychotherapist, just like you, offering the services that you offer in the area that you offer them. So be that, in a geographical location, for example, Swindon, or even if it's online exclusively. And we may talk about the online exclusively towards the end of this particular point, because it's a relatively new phenomenon that has popped up, the familiarity with counselors and clients doing their business online through Zoom and other online tools, video conferencing tools. So talking about understanding your audience and keywords, well, first of all, you need to decide who it is that you're looking to attract. So if, for example, you have a particular speciality in working with couples, then couples counseling has to be towards the top of your keyword list. And a keyword and a key phrase, remember, is the term that someone types into Google or whatever other search engine when they're looking for a counselor. So couples counseling. And we would often append something like the location onto it, because people will search for the location as well, because they want somebody close to them, close to their place of work. And culturally as well, there's a reason that people go closer to home for counseling, because they understand that that counselor will probably understand them a little bit more. For example, we don't go and see couples counseling in the US of A, because culturally it's just a different setup there, even though they speak English, and I'm sure their level of education in the area is just as good. The fact of the matter is people like to seek out a practitioner who is close to them. So understanding the keywords, I would always say to factor in the locality which you service into those keywords. Really, really important. And when you have those keywords, it kind of follows on to the next point, which is when you're actually building the website, those keywords and key phrases really need to feature prominently. So if you don't get off to a good start, the next few points are going to be a little bit tricky to get right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think to sum up, if you're a baker and you're selling pies in Manchester, something near to my heart here. If you're a baker and you're selling pies and someone searches for pies in Manchester, it may be quite a cluttered search. But if you make cheese pies or cheddar cheese pies and someone searches that, you're more likely to be found. So I guess the more precise you can be, the more chance of being found for your speciality. I mean, I used the word pies in a kind of humorous tone, but it goes to point out that if you can be more precise in your offering, you're more likely to be found. Would that be pretty much on it?
Well, 100%, because you are slicing up the competition with every additional keyword that you put in there. You're reducing the amount of competitors you can have. So if you can imagine you were based out of London and you wanted to rank number one in Google for counsellor in London, could you imagine the amount of competition that you would have? So straight away you would start to, if you want niche down, say counsellor West London. You could even go even further down into the general area of the city. You could even go, W1, counsellor in W1, SW1, etc. So a specific postcode. So the more niche you can make it, it will be easier to get a better placement in Google, but also because you're going to have less competition. So generally speaking, yes, the more niche you can be, the better. However, if you don't have a particular niche or specialty, or you don't cover one particular area, you're going to have to be creative in picking those keywords to make sure that you've got a good balance of not too many competitors, but enough searches to actually bring you some potential clients. So rather than always aiming for those super competitive keywords, maybe pick 2 or 3 keywords, key phrases underneath that collectively will add up to just as many searches as that headline counsellor in London. Because collectively, they'll all add up to the same amount of inquiries, yet along the way, you're going to have less competition in the search for those.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about being realistic, isn't it? If you put counsellor and someone contacts you and they're in London and you're in Manchester and they want to see you face to face, you may have kind of wasted your time. When I was in practice, I had Tameside counselling. I lived in Tameside. I was a counsellor, and I thought I'd put the two together. And lo and behold, I got a lot of inquiries from the people of Tameside, which was kind of what my goal was. So we've got the keyword, we've got an understanding of the keywords, and then I guess part of it is to optimize the website structure and content. So when people come into your website, like coming into your shop, they can find things easily. And if you use the analogy of a shop, if you went into a shop and it was just stuff cluttered everywhere, you'd probably go in, walk around and go out again. So having a well-structured shop is really important, where people know where to buy their products from. The same goes with the internet, isn't it? Well structured and really, really clear what people are looking for and where they can find it.
Yeah, and how does that manifest on a website? It manifests itself in 2 ways. So when we jump onto a website, probably one of the first things we look at is the menu structure. So we start to orientate ourselves around the website. What the hell is this website all about? What is on offer here? Okay. And then the second way that clarity and that structure and content will manifest itself is in clear headings. So if you can zoom out for a moment and you imagine somebody comes onto your website and it says, best service to you. Well, that's very generic. You don't really know what the hell they're talking about. Now, you may be on, Tameside counselling, but best service to you could be car service. It could be, the dentist. It could be a counsellor. It's very generic. So you want to factor in those keywords into your headings on the website, so that when someone starts to scroll through your page, especially on a mobile device, because so many people use mobile devices and we all use our thumbs to scroll down quite quickly through the pages, you want them to be able to see those headings. Now, Google, in coming up with its guidelines for what makes a good website from an SEO point of view, very much centers around what's good user experience. And so clarity and structure is really important. So when you have these very descriptive headings on the website, it kind of plays well into this. Is this good user accessibility, and just is it simple for the website visitor to navigate? And you might think that this is a basic concept. It is a basic concept, but it is super important from an SEO point of view, and it's often lost on a lot of people. And you'd be surprised, some very big brands even lose it themselves, lose the concept of this. So I would always encourage you to factor in some sort of keyword into every major heading on your website. And I think, Roy, we're going to talk about it later on, but as part of this particular podcast, we're going to do a walkthrough on a website that we have created, and we can demonstrate where we build that structure. So give you kind of a good sense of what those headings might look like, so that at least, people can add 2 and 2 and they can see it in the flesh.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that might be a good place to pause and speak about the demonstration of how to SEO and how to make sure that your site is found. So if you go to counselingtutor.com and go to the podcast tab, you will find us in the podcast between episode 285 and 286. And you will see on the show notes page, with all the show notes, an embedded video of Dara going through a website, so you can actually see. It's one thing talking about it on the podcast, but it's another thing actually seeing a video. And Dara's very, very kind and very graciously offered to record a little presentation showing exactly how to do SEO and talking about really effective ways of getting found. So just a reminder, counselingtutor.com, podcast tab, between 285 and 286 in the podcast, you'll find the special edition there. It's called Get Your Website Found plus 6 Essential Tips. You can search for it there and you'll be able to see that in action. So with that said, Dara, what's next?
All right, so just continue on in that website structure. There is a technical element to SEO which your web designer or web developer should be very familiar with. And that is the simple things like making sure your website is mobile friendly. As I mentioned just now, more than 50% of all website visits these days happen on mobile devices. So your website must be built and laid out, clear, concise manner for mobile devices. The website also has to be fast. If you can imagine the frustration of visiting a website that's incredibly slow, Google does not want people visiting websites which are slow because it contributes to a negative customer experience. So fast loading website, really important. There is a tool out there which we can discuss tomorrow as well in our video run through, and that is Google Page Speed Insights. Fire your website in there and you'll get an idea of how it's doing from a score point of view when it comes to mobile visitors. Really, really important. So optimizing your website structure and content, not only does it speak to the clear menu structure, the clear use of your keywords in headings, but also for the more technical elements, making sure your website is mobile friendly, it loads fast, and adheres to Google's own best practices when it comes to building a website.
Yeah, and I think there's an important point here, isn't there? Is that Google is, and we talk about Google, there are lots of other search engines, but let's be realistic, most people go to Google, don't they? Google is the default search engine. And one of the things about Google is that it's now becoming very selective. It's looking for real best practices in website design and indeed content. Well, we're going to come to that in a little while. So, you have to build it to satisfy Google's specifications. If you don't, to be quite brutal, Google will just de-rank you. They'll just take you off. So it's worth keeping that in mind, that when you build your website, part of it is to make sure that it's as we call it in the web business, I guess, Google friendly, Dara.
Absolutely. I mean, look at Google's guidelines for building a compliant website There's nothing wildly complicated here. All they're doing is putting clarity and putting, some sort of scaffolding around what makes a good user experience. And with so many websites on the internet today, Google has to help the searcher decipher what's a well put together website and what's not. And if your website is not well put together, maybe somebody built it and they didn't really understand these basic concepts. Maybe you did a DIY job with a DIY site builder and you didn't, speak to some of those really important usability factors, then Google is going to penalize you. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. And you're right, Rory, Google is the only show in town. If you're not in, you can't win. And if you're not on page one of Google, realistically, it's highly unlikely you're going to get a huge amount of traffic from any other search engine. And traffic is equal to inquiries, and inquiries is equal to a busy private practice, which, Rory, what it's all about, it's, you spend money on a website, it must work to bring you new clients. If it's not bringing you new clients, it's not working and something needs to be done. And
I think it's worth mentioning here, as sponsor of the website, you often say that the cost of a website can be covered by what is it? One client? What's the actual phrase you use?
Well, we reckon that just one client through your website every year will pay for the website. So I always like to think of this as a kind of an input-output point of view. If you spend X, you expect X plus Y back at the end of the year. And speaking to this website that we're going to do the walkthrough of, this was a website actually, Roy, that we built. It was a fictitious, believe it or not, counsellor in Swindon, whom we put together this website for. And it was a test that we did to see, put our money where our mouth is, frankly, to make sure that the advice that we're giving our clients rings true and actually works. And short story, it does. But through this website, we set up a contact form, which on the end of it had an autoresponder saying to any potential inquirers that this was a test website, not real, and here's some references for some people who can help. And we got a good number of inquiries through this website, Rory. And we got them in a very short period of time. And when we run the numbers, we're happy to say that the investment that somebody would have made in a website like this would have paid off. I think it was 5-fold over the space of just over a year. So we'll walk through the website separately in the video you've mentioned, and we'll go through that. But 100%, it only takes one client through your website every year for the website to pay for itself. I mean, that's a really strong proposition, if you ask me.
I think so. And just to reiterate, that experiment you carried out, you acted a little bit like a counselling director in a way. People came to you and then you just referred them on to people who would be able to help them. But in terms of an experiment, very useful. It just proved your hypothesis that by correctly keywording, by correctly optimising the site, that you could get found. And of course, I guess things like making sure your website's up to date is important as well, isn't it, Dara? Making sure that all the details are up to date.
Well, absolutely. So consistency and accurate name, address, and phone number, really, really important. So a lot of the listeners today will have multiple online presences. They may have a social media presence. They may have Instagram, a Facebook, maybe even a Twitter. They may be on their ethical bodies directory, maybe a third-party directory, and then they have their own website. And they may be on other websites throughout the internet as well. Really important from Google's point of view that there's consistency across all of those records. So when it comes to a sensitive area of life like counseling, Google wants to make sure that it's bringing its users, that's people who are searching for your keywords, to websites which are trustworthy. And if you can imagine from Google's point of view, you have 3 different phone numbers on the internet and 3 different addresses, and your name is spelled 3 different ways. It starts to kind of wonder about the bona fide of you. It looks a little bit careless. And what does that say about maybe you and how you practice and so on? And it mightn't say a whole pile, but from Google's point of view, it likes to make sure that that name, address, and phone number and other details like website address, social media handles, that they're consistent across the board. It's just it gives a good look. It's a good, strong CV for you. So we would always encourage people that whatever's on your website, make sure those basic details are replicated across the web to any older profiles that you might have on a directory website, ethical body website, etc., so that there's consistency. But also, if somebody is searching around, so they've found your website, they think that they might reach out to you and they want to do a little bit more research on you, it also inspires confidence in them too, if the details are consistent. And again, given the sensitivity of what people might be coming to speak to you about, confidence is king. So do everything you possibly can to build that confidence. And again, coming back to these Google guidelines, this isn't anything wildly technical or, smoke and mirrors. These are basics. But it's the basics that so many people get wrong, but yet that Google and other search engines put so much weight in. So really important to pay attention to that consistent and accurate name, address, phone number, website, social media handles, etc.
Yeah. And I guess it would be the same if you advertised in a newspaper or a periodical. They'd want accurate information so that their readers would be able to contact you and not phone up the newspaper or periodical and say, well, this people who've advertised, there's 3 different phone numbers and 4 different names in the advert, and before long it becomes, people lack trust. People don't trust you. And also I think one of the things that I think is pretty much the standard now is having some kind of location on your website where you are, maybe a map, a Google map, or some kind of details of where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose this plays to 2 points on SEO. Back to the consistent and accurate information. Always a good idea to have your location on your website. Google knows where a searcher's location is. These days, our smartphones will, give Google our location. When you're doing a search, Google can work out your location from your computer's IP address. It has a pretty good idea of where you are in the world. Now, it will use that information to localize the type of results that you get. So, for example, if you're up in Newcastle and you search for counsellor and I search for counsellor in Cornwall, we're both going to get 2 different sets of results. And most likely, even though those queries were very generic, we will get people who are in locations close to us. So Google is smart in that regard. It likes to bring people to service providers in their locality. But also from a location point of view, really important, and this is, I suppose, one of the basic SEO points, is to have a Google business profile. It used to be called Google My Business, now it's called Google Business. And that's that little profile that you see usually on top of the search results, sometimes on the right, if you're on a computer, whereby you list your address, your phone number, a link to your website, some pictures of your business, and also there's reviews of your business, the dreaded reviews. But this is a Google native service, so they want you using it, Rory, and it's also what shows up in some cases ahead of any other results. So really important that you get on there, you get this free profile. It takes 10 minutes to fill it out to get registered. Really worthwhile having. It's like a mini search engine in itself, in fact. So we would always recommend a presence on there to leverage that local SEO element of things.
Yes, it's a lot more, isn't it, than just having a website. It's a complete kind of map, an ecosystem of information that you're putting on the internet to develop credibility. And I guess in terms of credibility, clients may very well want to know who you are, what your credentials are, and also, as we always say, a well-taken picture of you. People tend to like pictures of the people they're dealing with, and I think that is an important part of websites. Would you agree, Dara?
Very much so. Rory, Google speaks specifically to something called EAT, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. And when you talk about credentials and your photo, that really plays into that acronym very nicely. So showing off your credentials, well, it tells Google, hey, listen, I know what I'm talking about. I'm not a fly by night. I've done the work. I've done the study. I've done my 100 hours plus. I am qualified to look after somebody if you bring them to my website. You're also introducing yourself to your particular audience. counseling is a very personal relationship you have with your clients. It's a one-to-one or one-to-two in some cases relationship that you have. So people want to establish rapport with you. People want to say, can I work with this counselor? And so a picture is incredibly important. In fact, the website that we're going to do a video walkthrough, we source a stock photo of a lady, and she's very approachable and I dare say jovial looking. She's got a smile on her face, very welcoming. And you think to yourself, wow, I think I could work with this person. And well, the results speak for themselves. We had, I think it was over 30 inquiries through this website, Rory, in a relatively short period of time. So a picture, incredibly important to have alongside your credentials. So people can make a judgment. Unfortunately, it's as simple as that. Can make a judgment on you and whether they think they can work with you. So information about your memberships to ethical bodies, maybe any charity work that you've done, information on your qualifications, how long you've been counseling, areas that you have particular interest in, as I said, maybe working with young people, working with couples. All this really important to lay out your stall. Google really likes it because it feels then with that extra information, you're building trust, and Google itself is more confident bringing people to your website because it has a good sense that you're trustworthy. Think about it, Rory. You wouldn't refer me to a plumber you used in the house if maybe, your wallet went missing after he was there. You wouldn't do it. So Google wants to be able to make that referral by showing your website in the search on the basis that it thinks you're trustworthy. Yeah. So think about your website if you have one right now. Pause the podcast and say, if I was looking at my website, do I come across as trustworthy, an expert, authoritative on the subject matter? And if not, maybe think about how you could make that website a little bit more authoritative and trustworthy. And then jump online, send an email to your web designer, make the change. I think it will really pay dividends for you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, Dara. And I also think that we need to always think about what we offer from the client's point of view. At the top of the podcast, you said the idea of make something and they will come has gone. We are now servicing people who know exactly what they want or a good idea of what they want. And that talks to something called know, like, and trust. People make buying decisions on people they know or people they're familiar with, people they like, and people they trust. And if you have no like and trust, almost certainly you're more likely for someone to contact you. And your website plays a big part in that. When people are looking for help, they may not know who to look for help for, but if they land on your website and you're speaking to them and their issues, and they see your picture, they see your qualifications, they're more likely to put you into a shortlist or even contact you to be their therapist. So always thinking from the client's frame of reference, not your own.
Absolutely. It's as simple as that. And again, there's this mystique around the concept of SEO, but know, like, and trust. It's in there. It's in there with the EAT, with the showing off your credentials and introducing yourself to the audience. So a real fundamental, but we speak obviously to a lot of counselors, and even now to this day, a lot of people are quite maybe hesitant to divulge too much about themselves for fear of, overdoing it. But my view is you can't overdo it. People are looking for this information. You don't need to tell them what your favorite breakfast cereal is, but you can speak to how you can help them, where you've come. What's your story? Have you experience in this particular specialist area? And, your own personal experience motivated you to go out there and help people. People can identify with that. And at the end of the day, when somebody knows that you have direct experience in a particular area, they're more likely to speak to you because you've walked in their shoes, and they're going to feel much safer, more confident in speaking to you about it. So, if you haven't direct experience, not the end of the world. There's still many ways you can build that trust with people so that they're confident of reaching out. And even if it's just arranging that initial 15-minute call to speak to them to see if it's something that you can help them with, that's what you want. You want to get speaking to these potential clients and hopefully, booking them in for some sessions. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And I think there's no better way of developing the know, like, and trust than speaking about your area of expertise. And one of the things that modern websites now have a lot of, if you look at very, very well put together websites, usually someone blogs. They blog about their expertise and or frequently asked questions. There's a lot of mileage in when people are looking, certainly around trauma. Just give you a hint here. People might wonder why they felt a certain way when they're in a traumatic or stressful situation. Just giving some basic information can be such a powerful addition to your portfolio of qualifications and your general offering.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we think about laying out our website, I always say to people, you need to consider a blog. If you have a blog on your website where you publish, as you say, some FAQs, you maybe deep dive into a particular nuance of how your particular style of counseling can help. It's incredibly useful from several points of view, but a blog allows you to section that off from the main menu structure on the website. So at face value, your website, very easy to navigate. 4 or 5 pages is typically all you'll need on your website. But then if somebody wants to deep dive into a particular subject, your blog is there. It's like a library. You can jump into that library and then you can see all of the content that has been written and you can work down through it. But also those blogs offer a lovely entry point for the search. So, for example, if someone has, a notion in their head that CBT can help with depression, and they Google something like, can CBT help with depression? And you have a blog article written specifically on that, Google has a pretty good chance of showing that specific blog article in the search because you're answering that direct question. And Google wants to show results to the users that are more, most likely going to satisfy their search query. So if someone is asking, can CBT help with depression? And you have a blog article saying, here's how CBT can help with depression, you can be damn sure that Google is going to introduce your website in the search results to that searcher. And then when you jump onto the website, you go down through your take on how CBT can help with depression, and you'll have a call to action. If this is of interest to you, I offer online counseling sessions via Zoom or in person in location XYZ. And you're kind of, coaxing the person, if it's right, for them to reach out and contact you to see if you're a suitable counselor for them. So a blog is a great magnet, if you want, for very specific questions. But also, it's a demonstration to people that you know what you're talking about, and you're also interested in going a little bit further to help people. Because when you write those blog articles, write them on the basis that you think no one ever is going to contact you through them. So add as much value as you can. Give it freely. When somebody reads that, they'll see that you're educating them, that you're sharing your experience, your professional experience, your life experience with them. That's valued. People naturally will pick up the phone, press the contact us button, and Google will see it in the same way. Google, again, wants to bring searchers to websites that are of value. How do you increase value on your website? You create more content. What type of content do you create? You create content around those frequently asked questions, around the areas in which you specialize. That's gold for Google. Content is king. And in the website that we're going to walk through, you'll see that we've just added just a few blog posts sporadically too, because we have to be real about this. A lot of people start with the best intentions. We recommend 2 blog posts a month if you really want to nail it. We've on purpose only added, I think it's less than 10 sporadically over the course of a year and a half, but at the same time maintain page 1 positions for some very competitive keywords. So blogging is a fantastic tool, and I can guarantee you at least 50% of your colleagues are not doing it. So you need to do it if you want to propel yourself up those search results.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to remind everybody, and I guess in the service of search engine optimization for the Counselling Tutor website, if you go to counsellingtutor.com, click the podcast tab, if you go to between episode 285 and 286 of the Counselling Tutor podcast, you will find SEO basics, get your website found, plus 6 essential tips. And on that, there is an embedded video with Dara taking us through how to SEO a website, and also those essential blog posts. It's honestly, it's pure gold just to be able to see it. It's one thing hearing it on a podcast, but seeing it in action is something else. And of course, you'll get those show notes. Dara, it's always fascinating talking to you. You're a real expert. You know, webhealer.net, let's not forget, is an expert do it for you service. It's a one-stop shop where they can come to you and you will take all the difficulty out of producing a website and do it for somebody. And just to remind everybody that we have a little agreement with webhealer.net. If you go to webhealer.net and use the coupon CT100, so webhealer.net, and use the coupon CT100, you get £100 off their Do It For Me service. They will do it for you for £100 off. That's fantastic, Dara.
Well, listen, Rory, we love working with counsellors, and we believe we can add a lot of value to your practice. I'm delighted to talk with you on the podcast and to share what we see. I mean, we manage thousands of websites for counsellors in the UK. So when we see these trends emerging, we're in a good place to share that with our customers, with your listeners. And regardless of that, if you've got a website right now or you don't want a website just yet, reach out to me. I'd be happy to have a look at your existing website, shoot you a few pointers, no obligation, no hooks, no tie-ins. I love to help people. I love to point them in the right direction because, Rory, your listeners do fantastic work, a critical piece of our world, and that's why we love working with them so much. So anything we can do, happy to point people in the right direction.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for that very kind offer of, supporting therapists, even if they have their own website, just to give them a few pointers. So it just remains for me to say, Dara McLaughlin from webhealer.net, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor podcast. Find the show notes for this episode by visiting counsellingtutor.com.